Hello, Expanse people. Chris and I are here doing a retrospective review on the pilot episode of all of our favorite show, The Expanse. If you have not seen it and you're just stumbling upon our channel for the first time, get out of here. Get the hell out of here. Go watch the show. Go watch the pilot.
And come back.
Yeah.
Come back after you watch it and chat with us. Leave us some comments. We're gonna be talking about how this just hits all the emotions and all the good stuff. And we want to hear what you guys think too. And if you guys want to see more of these videos, you want to see more of us watching, previous seasons, full seasons, let us know if that's something that would tickle your heartstrings. Oh,
Like, subscribe, leave a comment. Tell us what you're thinking about The Expanse.
I remember watching it the first time, I think when it dropped on Amazon. I was just hooked. This pilot is so good. And I've seen a lot of good pilots, like Lost and The Americans. Like, there's some real good pilots out there, but this one just grabs you from the start.
Rewatching it, I was actually surprised at how good of a pilot episode I thought it was. I really took it for granted because you recommended, like, hey, go watch The Expanse, it's great. And that was several, like, 3 seasons in. I just burned through it. Right? I just
Yeah.
on to the next, on to the next. I am just floored at how impressed I am with the world building. I would say more than anything, they are establishing things we take for granted five
Yeah.
seasons later. Things that you had as a watcher, if you haven't read the books, you have no context. My God, the money they spent for a sci-fi show. Remember, this was on the Sci-Fi Channel.
Yes.
It looks way more
Let's
expensive than that.
Dude, let's
Um,
put that into a little perspective. I think there was a lot of skepticism when this show first dropped because there's people that are like, oh yeah, those were like some good, respectable books, but it's coming out on sci-fi? Like, they were doing Sharknado 7 at that point or something. There was see, nobody was taking sci-fi seriously for prestige TV. And suddenly they're doing this real hardcore, quality science fiction stuff that hadn't been done in a few years.
they were kind of like, Eureka, right? Fun shows that were like they're basically like the CW of sci-fi. Like they're
Right,
they're
right.
campy, they're
Yep,
fun, but the budgets are very reasonable.
right.
And this show had none of that, and you know that
Yeah,
immediately with the pilot. Getting introduced to belters and the whole universe is pretty amazing.
yep.
It was pretty amazing.
Yeah,
The CGI, the sets, it's amazing. Like you
it
truly
just
feel
holds
like
up,
you are in. Yeah, it holds up.
right?
I really couldn't tell the difference between stuff coming out this year
Right.
and when this was
And
made
season
initially.
1. It's all of that stuff, but it's also the way they tell this story. It starts out with this just confusing moment. There's this girl in this ship and she's trapped, and then suddenly she's seeing this bonkers, neon, crazy, you don't even know what. And then you've got this mystery, this sort of hard-boiled detective noir happening. It feels so familiar. It makes this sort of alien experience of being this belter colony feel sort of familiar because we're seeing it through these sort of hard-boiled detective, eyeballs or whatever. Like, it's very cool stuff.
She's still here on series. Detain her and ship her home.
Kidnap job. My pleasure.
Watching the pilot really reminded me at how good this show is in grounding you in the reality of this near future. The people who make this show, the company, Alcon,
Alcon,
yeah,
yeah, yeah,
my God, they have known what they were doing since the beginning
yeah.
because they treat the world of the Expanse with the reverence it deserves and with like kind
Yep.
of like the awe-inspiring. I think people
Yeah,
use the word awesome too much, but like, look, that first G burn, right?
yeah.
That first G burn, they treat it like, hey, you've never seen this before. Reverence or awe-inspiring, like respect on like, look what humans have built in the near future. And zero G burn, we're taking off, flying through space. It was well
Right.
done. They hit all the emotional highs.
I think part of it is like how closely they've kept, the authors of the book series involved. Like, clearly they want to do this right. This whole creative team, and everybody, just you can tell from the beginning, like, is really, really put in great work. Writers, directors, and the cast. Like, already from the beginning, Holden, especially in the first episode, you really wonder, you're like, what's this guy all about? He's so gruff, and he doesn't want to get involved in anything. There's so much growth seeing him from the first episode where he's just so kind of reluctant to stand out or step into any kind of position of authority or leadership, and to see him become this just, real badass take charge guy. Oh, it's so cool to see like where that starts.
Right after you tell me the story about those. It's just, there's.
For me, watching it, I was like, oh my God, Holden used to be so fun. I was like, what happened? They really used to let Steven Strait have more humor. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
Holden is so fun. By the end of the episode, he's murdered everybody on
"Ooh."
accident.
And-
You're like, oh, that's maybe took a little spring out of his step, right?
There's something you should know.
That ending, his girlfriend is like, there's something I have to tell you. And every time I just get chills, when she says it, he's like, we're never going to find out. We're never going to find out what she's, did she forget to take the dog out and it was going to pee, or like, we don't know. It bugs me. It's bugged me every day since I saw that pilot, because it's just like, what a powerful, like, little moment that you're like, oh, that's it. No, that's final. Everybody's gone.
Yeah. Well, I think we know she was pregnant. I think know.
Exactly. I think
We
that's
know.
that's always been the reasonable speculation. I like, taking the dog out, but whatever, you'll never
It's
know.
rips your heart out a little less.
So far out into the darkness. Why couldn't we have brought more light?
They had, Jonathan Banks from Breaking Bad in this just little thankless role. He's barely on screen, but you're like, oh, it's Jonathan Banks. Like, if you watch TV, I think at that point, people kind of were somewhat aware. He wasn't nobody. It seemed like they were building this whole crew in this world where we're going to follow the Canterbury and the adventures of the Canterbury out in space. And that was going to be a core part of this show. And then at the end of the first episode, it's like, no, that's all gone. That's all done. And it was so shocking because it felt like such a lived-in ship and place that we were going to be at least following for that season.
This episode in particular does an amazing job at subverting your expectations.
100%.
This is how you do it. Subverting expectations isn't building things up needlessly and then throwing them away casually and being like, well, nihilism. We're going to be on this ship, the Canterbury. No.
Yeah.
This girl's going to be part of the crew. No. Just that way of like building things up and then taking them away in a good timeline, because
Yeah.
Holden is now established, like, he's in your heart. Like, you know him and you feel for him through this one tragedy alone. That's how you do a subversion of expectations in a TV show. The Expanse nails it.
Air is good, don't you think?
Air's nice.
Biller was great. I miss Thomas Jane. I love how he's such a dick in the beginning. I mean, a likable dick, but a dick nonetheless. And by the end, the little girl coughing, the broken air filters, he's got to do something, which really speaks to his end. How in the end he cared and he wanted more.
It's Miller, but it's also so many of the characters in this are sort of torn between their allegiances with these worlds. That these are people who they're from one place, but none of them 100% belong. Like Alex isn't the best Martian out there. Holden, Miller, like everybody kind of is a little bit of an orphan from their own people. And you like just even from the pilot episode, like it's so ingrained, this conflict, between these factions, but then also how our people are caught up in it. It's just good stuff.
I did it. Just couldn't shake it.
I'd keep that to myself if I were you.
That is the moment he actually shows her his heart. For no reason really, other than he just couldn't keep it inside, and he didn't want his girlfriend getting blamed, but that moment is like, that is the moment that grows. That is the seed that grows, and so much of this pilot episode has that. There was a study a few years ago that showed if you know the ending of a story, you actually enjoy the journey of reading the story, like reading the book or going through the experience. Sure. And I definitely had that while watching this pilot because I know where it's all going. So it's like we're meeting Amos, Naomi, and we're meeting the crew, but they're clearly strangers. There's clearly friction. They don't have, and just knowing how that all ends up, it feels so good to know a show has cared and loved about these characters for so long that you can go back and watch it and it just feels right.
Now that we're going into the last season, it's kind of fun to go back and see where it began. If you want to see us watching, more episodes, more retro episodes of The Expanse, we'd love to hear your thoughts. We'd love to hear what your emotional experiences are with this episode as well. Leave comments below, and we look forward to seeing you in the next video.